showering at the moment, and or have you just had a shower? And did you manage to do it in 4 minutes flat?
Yeah.
Nigel says, I've just timed my shower at 3 minutes 30 seconds, and there's a lot of me to wash.
Yeah, that is impressive. Jason, though, he can better that by 1.5 minutes. He says, I can have a proper shower. 2 minutes. Clue, I have flat hair.
Oh, flat hair?
Flat hair. Is that a polite way of saying no hair?
I think maybe, or very little. Tony in Bury St Edmunds says, 4 minute shower, easy. We now straddle a bucket to collect water. 10 litres ago, easy. Ditched the bath years ago.
Yeah. Claire says, living in Abu Dhabi at the moment, Cape Town was home for years where they were having droughts. We were coping with 2 minute showers, which were done standing in buckets or baby baths and saving almost every drop. Washing machine water was saved or fed directly into the garden. Toilets only flushed if necessary.
Oh.
There's a rhyme for that.
Yeah.
There's a rhyme for that.
Yeah.
There is a rhyme for that. Adrian in the Forest of Dean says, try a 3 minute shower. We used to have them in the army. Water on, get wet, water off, lather up, water on to rinse off, job done. I still do today, even having left the forces. Not much water is used, less than 40 litres.
Yeah, liking this.
Do it the way the army does it.
Yeah, we're joined by Tom Slater from Spite and
Mariana
Potter as well. Guys, what's your times?
I haven't timed myself recently, but I've got quite long hair and it's quite thick, so you can't shampoo and condition and rinse in 4 minutes.
You can't, no.
Very difficult. But the kind of the turn off the shower in between, that is definitely a thing. Because otherwise you end up turning the shower head away because you don't want it to
That's
wash
right,
out
but that's just wasting water.
Yeah.
What about you, Tom?
I've never timed myself as it happens, but I'm very much now. So.
We are
What
going
do you mean you've never timed yourself in the shower? This is the national pastime at the moment. Yeah.
We are going to be
Go
doing
shower.
this later on with our lovely sports reporter Aidan McGee is going to have a shower during the programme, and we're going to time him to see if he can do it in 4
Brilliant.
minutes
I think it
flat.
should be one of those sort of like TikTok or social media memes, shouldn't it?
It will
You get
be
a
now.
60-second video on Instagram. Maybe everyone should, I mean, you know,
You'll have to use one of
suitably
those
fussed out.
combination shampoo and conditioners, which I'm never convinced of.
How does that work?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Both
I
things
don't
at
know, but
once.
you'll have to give it a
Do
go.
you remember the days of timing yourself while you washed your hands? And now it's timing yourself in the
You had
shower.
to sing, didn't you? You had to sing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Do you remember the early days
Happy
of
birthday.
COVID?
Yeah.
Was it Happy
2 rounds
Birthday?
of happy
Either.
birthday.
So we need a 4 minute song for the shower.
do.
And then we can have singing in the shower.
That's a good idea. A 4 minute song.
You've got to know all the lyrics.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
4 minutes.
Okay, shall we get on with what we're meant to do?
Anyway.
Well, we could do, but
actual
it's
news.
less fun.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
kind of news.
Marianne, let's start with you. In the Mirror, you've been looking at the human cost of fuel poverty.
Yeah, are you ready for an epic tonal gear shift here? Okay, so this is about the concern that people are having over costs. Obviously, things are going to get pretty gnarly in the autumn, but people are already feeling
More so.
More so, exactly. So this is a really, really sad story about a particular family, a woman called Judith Thorpe, who died last week, only 49, died of COVID complications, leaving 3 children orphaned, 2 teenagers and an elder son in his 20s. Their dad died of cancer some years ago. She's a cleaner in the NHS, or was a cleaner in the NHS, and she was worried about fuel bills because her fuel bill had gone from £45 a month to 110.
Oh my.
She was worried about buying a school uniform for her 2 daughters for September coming up, and so she cancelled her contributions to her NHS pension scheme, which means that she saved £210. She got £210 back from this scheme, from the pension contributions.
Yeah.
But it means that by accident, if she'd been a member of the pension scheme when she died, her family would have got a £30,000 payout.
Oh, no.
Because you'd be it's a membership in death benefit. It's one of those kind of weird.
But she died uncovered by that
Because she
insurance.
cancelled the pension contribution
To pay for the school uniform.
1 month before she died. And obviously, it's tragic on every level.
Yes.
Because
There's tragedy heaped on
you'd pay
tragedy.
30 grand to have your mum back, of
Yes.
course. But they are orphaned and have this kind of additional blow in terms of the family finances.
And amazingly, she's a hospital cleaner, and she's contracted COVID and died of it.
Yeah, so it's a rare thing that they think maybe about 20 people in the whole world have had this response to the COVID virus. They're not 100% sure, but the virus went into her spinal cord, and there were complications, and so she had a seizure and died.
That is just horrible.
It's genuinely every level of horrible. So I'm really sorry, but obviously
we need to know
with the
we
family.
Need to know.
But I think again, these
are the choices that people are having to make.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
For 200 quid, people are making these choices, and of course, the long-term impact of going, I can't afford to pay into my pension, not only has a huge impact on someone's personal sort of quality of life when they're older, but also, I mean, looking at the bigger picture, stepping back, when we're talking about who's going to be the leader of the government, what kind of policies do we want our government to have, that has a huge impact, because this is just one individual. There are thousands of people, or perhaps millions of people over the country saying, oh, I can't afford to save that little bit of money. I don't want to up my pension
like she did.
And the government are going to have to pick up that bill.
Well, exactly. And actually, on
Down
that
the
note,
line.
from you, and this takes us into our next story, but the two are connected. You want to talk about the Tory leadership campaign, Liz Truss saying everyone can thrive. It doesn't feel like that at the moment, especially given what Marianne's just said.
I think that's exactly right. This particular sort of intervention in the Sunday Express is Liz Truss trying to do a kind of Sunny Uplands boosterish, very kind of Boris Johnson-esque. We need to ignore the voices of decline. Our best days are ahead of us, and all the rest of it. But at the same time, what's the big gap in her pitch right now, of course, which she's under a lot of pressure for, is the question of what are you going to do immediately? We could talk about the long term. You could talk about your longer term vision for the country and what you want to do. But it's quite clear that some significant intervention is going to need to be made in the winter. We've finally seen Keir Starmer come back from holiday and say something last night, talking about he's got an interview in the Observer today, or comments in the Observer today, talking about the need to just basically freeze the price cap where it is, and pressure for an intervention as significant as that is really going to be building, and yet we're hearing nothing really from Liz Truss. We're hearing a bit from Rishi Sunak, but it's relatively meagre.
But I suppose you could say, you could say that Liz Truss isn't talking to us. She's only really campaigning at the moment and talking to voting members of the Conservative Party.
That's 100% right, and of course there's always a slightly kind of warping aspect of the Tory leadership race. You wonder, why are they talking about that when you consider it's a very specific electorate? But I think, especially with the sort of projections we're seeing recently in recent days, talk of maybe even the average bill going up to 5,000 over the course of a year potentially, this is going to reach really high up the income scale as well. So there's going to be people even voting in this election who probably a year ago felt incredibly comfortable, who are going to, even they are going to start feeling the pinch, let alone people on electricity keys and all the rest of it. So it's going to be
It's hard to see how she can, assuming she does become Prime Minister, it's difficult to see how she can avoid having to give out payments. Because I've spoken to her twice and I've said tax cuts are only good for taxpayers. So what are you going to do about the millions of people who don't pay tax, either because they're on disability, because they don't earn more than 12,570, they don't pay any tax. Tax cuts won't help them. And she just says she's going to have an emergency statement, emergency budget, but she's not going to tell us what's in it.
No, well, she'll deal with that when she becomes Prime Minister. That's what she's more or less saying. Shall we move on to the drought, Marianne? So, again, not good news.
No.
Sorry about
I'm
this.
full of the joys of grimness, aren't I? It's very wet, very, very wet. If only it were very wet. Water leaks are doubling during the heat wave.
Why would they be doubling during a heat wave?
Well,
Are more pipes cracking because it's hot or something? We've got some water.
so there's a fall in the water table, and so Thames Water is leaking 624 million litres.
Ironically, you have some water.
That's very good of you, thank you. I shan't waste it. And so there's a kind of concern, I think, because water is being pumped at a higher pressure to meet demand, and so that has some impact on the force of the water going through some of the pipes that are being used, and therefore likelihood of either continuing additional damage or just more escaping when there is a crack or a leak. It's really an indicator, I guess, of perhaps a lack of long-term investment in the infrastructure. It's that thing, isn't it? If you kind of look back in the history books, when the River Thames was a big heap of sewage in Victorian times, before they kind of went, we really have to do something about this, and they had to close the House of Commons because the great stink was so disgusting that the members of Parliament couldn't bear to sit in the House of Commons because the stench was unbearable. Never mind the kind of the hoi polloi that riff-raff had been putting up with over decades. Yeah, when it finally got to the long corridors of power, they did something. At which point there was this massive infrastructure project that dug up lots of bits of London and installed sewers that were designed in principle to, last London forever. But now they're falling apart. But also the water supplies, the pipes, the infrastructure in the rest of the country. You do wonder whether it's an event like this that will really just turn the screw and go, something has to be done.
We need more
We
reservoirs.
have to invest. But then we're in a kind of an economic climate where people go, we haven't really got the money.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Betty in Dorset, thanks very much for getting in touch. Betty, she says, I prefer a shower, and mine is a power shower. When the water companies plug the leaks and stop wasting 9 billion litres of water, then maybe we can take their advice seriously.
Yeah, and on that, Tom.
A lot of people feel very bitter about it.
Yeah, and on that, Tom, it's in the Mail, Minister, I'll find water industry sharks. Is that related to these leaks?
Yes, it is. Essentially, it's calling on the water companies to do two things: to put their customers first. There's been a lot of stories recently about the huge dividends that a lot of these companies are paying to their shareholders, as well as the bonuses and whatnot that their CEOs are getting, despite the fact that these companies are not performing well, shall we say. The figures we've heard bandied about so many times in recent days, a couple billion litres a day being lost through leakage. I believe that's about 20% of the water that we're using in general is actually going towards these leaks, and it's just an incredibly dysfunctional industry at the moment. Of course, it's such a very bizarre setup that we have, that you have private companies basically maintaining monopolies. They're not under very much pressure whatsoever to actually offer a good service, and you're seeing that from the government, even though they've been nervous to obviously kind of intervene too much in anything on a point of ideology, they are seeing that there's going to be a point at which people aren't going to put up with this anymore. There was a great story yesterday talking about how you had, when Thames Water were talking about announcing restrictions and all the rest of it, you had burst water mains in Islington, which were losing far more water than people, not putting the hose pipe on their garden would ever make up for. So it's just quite clear that something's got to give, and if it seems like what the government are hoping is that they can get the water companies to get their act together before the conversation becomes a lot bigger about why are these companies maintaining these monopolies, despite the fact that they're giving such a dreadful service to everyone else.
Yeah, and the conversation appears to be shifting again. There's a broader conversation here that's happening about renationalising companies and should they be making profits when other people, when there are leaks, when they're not doing their job and other people are suffering.
No, completely, and also just the complete lack of accountability, a complete lack of pressure on them to do a good job. I mean, you're in a situation in which anything goes wrong, they just blame climate change, they say this is nothing to do with us and all the rest of it. And people are starting to ask that question. If you're in London, you can't pick up and take your business somewhere else. If you're with your water company, you're not going to say, goodbye Thames Water, I'm going to go and set it up somewhere. How dysfunctional it's been has been really clear. And the lack of investment, the lack of reservoirs, none being built for 30 years and all the rest of it. Serious questions about that are going to be it's taken this crisis to do it, I guess.
Yeah, although I have heard that apparently the rate of leaks is better than it was when the companies were state-owned.
I can't comment on that, I don't know. But the thing that we've all forgotten about, because it hasn't rained, at least in the southeast, I mean, let's not forget, some people are getting a bit of rain. There isn't a water drought in half of the country. But in the southeast, it's kind of hard to remember when it last rained. But think about autumn and winter, when you get those big rain deluges, the water companies discharge sewage, raw sewage, into those watercourses, into rivers, into the sea. People get sick. There's streams and rivers near where I live in Hertfordshire, and there's a group of, I guess, kind of volunteer wardens who go around taking pictures and putting them on social media, and then lodging official complaints. They know how to do the kind of paperwork with Ofwat, which is the water company regulator that has the power to fine these water companies, but also with the kind of Environment Agency for these sewage discharges, and basically they're photographs of toilet paper and I know everyone's having breakfast, but all the like grim stuff that comes straight out of your toilet.
But they also discharge good water, clean water
Well, that's
as well,
it.
don't they?
And
Because in the winter, we have a lot of
Too
rainfall
much.
in this country,
And it all gets mixed up.
We're not conserving it properly either.
And we're still flushing our toilets with drinking water.
Yes.
I mean, that's
which
so
has always been,
wasteful.
and we're
It's
still
insane.
building houses set up to do that.
Exactly.
Why we haven't addressed this problem years ago and had a sort of what they call a brown water system in the house or something.
Yeah.
You flush your loo with water that comes out of the dishwasher, or
Or the washing machine. And someone was saying actually that could be better because it's got detergent in
It's
it.
already got detergent in it.
Yeah.
Cleans your toilet better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that we flush our water and we bath in drinkable water, isn't it? Absolutely crazy.
Well, I don't mind bathing in it because you might get it in your mouth. But flushing the loo,
Well,
I definitely don't need to be pouring like Evian down there.
absolutely.
Guys, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'd love to hear from anyone who's got a house that's built with a system where you actually do use brown water for brown water type things and clean water only for drinking. Love to hear if you've got one of those houses. Very few of them around.